What if a character's actions were not driven by reason or logic, but by hidden fears, forbidden desires, and repressed memories? This is where psychoanalytic criticism enters the world of literature. In this video, we'll explore how this influential theory, rooted in the work of Sigmund Freud, has changed the way we read texts, understand characters, and uncover the unconscious motivations behind literature. Whether you're a student, teacher, or literary enthusiast, this journey into the unconscious will offer you new ways of seeing literature, and perhaps yourself. Let's start with the origins of psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, is the founding figure of psychoanalysis. He proposed that the human mind is divided into three parts: the id, instinctual desires; the ego, the rational self; the superego, moral conscience. Most of our desires, fears, and memories, especially those we repress, reside in the unconscious mind. Freud also introduced key concepts like Oedipus complex, a child's unconscious desire for the opposite-sex parent; defense mechanisms, such as repression, denial, projection, displacement, and sublimation; dream analysis, where dreams are wish fulfillments, revealing unconscious desires. Let's dive deeper into one of Sigmund Freud's most influential contributions to psychoanalysis and to literary theory, is his tripartite model of the human psyche. He believed that the human mind is not a unified whole, but a system of conflicting forces operating at different levels of consciousness. First, the iceberg metaphor. Freud often compared the mind to an iceberg. The small visible part above the water represents the conscious mind, while the much larger hidden portion below represents the unconscious. Only a small part of what drives us is accessible to our awareness. In other words, the human mind is divided into the conscious and the unconscious, which is mysterious and hidden. Now, let's talk about the three components of the psyche that we mentioned before. A. The id. The id is the primitive, instinctual part of the psyche. It operates on the pleasure principle, seeking immediate gratification of desires like hunger, aggression, and sexual impulses. The id is entirely unconscious and contains the basic drives present from birth. I want it now. That's the voice of the id. B. The ego. The ego is the rational, realistic part of the psyche. It develops from the id and operates on the reality principle, trying to satisfy the id's desires in socially acceptable ways. The ego functions in both the conscious and unconscious mind. It mediates between the demands of the id, the superego, and the external world. Let's think this through. That's the voice of the ego, the superego. The superego is the moral conscience. It internalizes the rules and values of society, often imposed by parents or authority figures. It judges our behavior, creating feelings of pride or guilt. The superego also exists on both the conscious and unconscious levels. You shouldn't do that. It's wrong. That's the voice of the superego. Now let's talk about the important thing that Freud talks about, the conflict within these three components. Freud believed that much of human behavior, and by extension, literary character behavior, results from the conflict between these three forces. The id wants what it wants, now. The superego says, that's immoral. The ego has to find a realistic compromise. In literature, this inner conflict often drives the plot. A character may feel torn between duty and desire, or experience guilt, repression, or denial. Key concepts in Freudian analysis. Freud was not the only figure in psychoanalysis. Other key figures include Carl Jung and Jacques Lacan. Carl Jung expanded Freud's theories. He focused on the collective unconscious is shared by all humans and contains archetypes like the hero, shadow, mother, and trickster. Jungian criticism explores symbols, myths, and the individuation process, how characters evolve into their full psychological selves. When we talk about psychoanalysis in literature, Freud is the starting point, but Jacques Lacan offers a more modern, linguistic, and philosophical approach. A French psychoanalyst and philosopher, Lacan reinterpreted Freud's theories using ideas from structuralism, linguistics, and philosophy, especially the work of Saussure and Derrida. For Lacan, the unconscious is structured like a language. Lacan believed that the unconscious doesn't speak in raw instinct, it speaks in language. Just like language has rules, signs, and structures, so does the unconscious. This means literature, a product of language, is full of unconscious slips, gaps, and signs that critics can interpret. Implication for criticism. Literary texts can be decoded, like dreams, to find repressed meanings and contradictions. He introduced concepts like the mirror stage, where identity forms, and the real, imaginary, and symbolic orders, complex structures shaping the subject. Lacan proposed that around 6 to 18 months of age, a child recognizes their reflection in a mirror and identifies with it. This is the first experience of the self as a whole image, even though, internally, the child still feels fragmented. This moment creates the I, but it's based on an illusion, a misrecognition. Now, Lacan explains the real, the imaginary, and the symbolic. Lacan divides human experience into three interrelated realms. A, the imaginary, associated with images, fantasies, and illusions. Formed during the mirror stage, how we imagine ourselves and others. Characters often live in the imaginary when driven by idealized visions or fantasies. The symbolic, the world of language, law, and social rules. It's where the subject enters when they start speaking and following society's codes. Characters feel pressure from social structures, family, law, morality. C, the real. Not reality as we know it, but what cannot be represented in language or fantasy. The real is traumatic, unknowable, and resists symbolization. In literature, this may appear as death, madness, or a moment of total breakdown. In a story, a character may long for something, imaginary, be constrained by society, symbolic, and encounter unbearable truths, real. These thinkers widened the scope of psychoanalytic criticism beyond Freud's original ideas, offering new tools for literary interpretation. Now, let's apply psychoanalytic criticism to literature by applying the following steps. First, analyze characters like patients. Psychoanalytic critics treat characters as if they were real people with unconscious minds. They ask, oh, what are the characters' repressed desires or fears? Oh, do they show signs of trauma, guilt, or internal conflict? Oh, how do they defend themselves psychologically, e.g., through denial, projection, or rationalization? Example: Hamlet's delay might reflect unconscious guilt and internal conflict between desire and duty. Secondly, look for symbols, dreams, and slips. Literature often contains symbols that reflect deeper, hidden meanings. Psychoanalytic critics interpret dreams, fantasies, and even mistakes in speech or narration, like Freudian slips. They ask, oh, what might a recurring image or dream represent? Oh, how does a symbol express a repressed thought? Example: a locked room in a story might symbolize the unconscious, or a secret desire. Thirdly, explore the author's psyche. Some psychoanalytic critics focus on the author's unconscious mind. They might read a text as an expression of the writer's hidden fears, desires, or unresolved issues. Note: this approach is controversial, especially when critics speculate too much without biographical evidence. Fourthly, you can also study reader psychology. Another branch of psychoanalytic criticism focuses on the reader's response. It asks, oh, why do certain texts affect us emotionally? Oh, how do readers project their own desires or fears onto a story? Example: a reader might identify with a tragic hero because of their own unresolved guilt or loss. Fifthly, Identify universal psychological patterns. Drawing on Jungian theory, critics look for archetypes that appear across cultures and time. O, the hero, O, the mother, O, the shadow, the dark side of the self. These patterns reveal deep structures in human storytelling and psychology. In short, psychoanalytic critics do the following: interpret characters as psychological case studies, uncover hidden meanings beneath the text, analyze symbols, dreams, and repressed content. Sometimes explore the author's or reader's psyche. Reveal how literature taps into universal psychological patterns. To recap, psychoanalytic critics don't just read stories, they analyze the psyche behind them. Here's what they often look for. What unconscious desires or fears motivate the character? Does the character show signs of repression, trauma, or internal conflict? How do dreams, symbols, or slips of the tongue reveal deeper truths? What hidden meaning might lie behind a seemingly irrational action? Let's take William Shakespeare's Hamlet as an example. Hamlet through psychoanalytic lens. Freud himself saw Hamlet as a reflection of the Oedipus complex. Hamlet's delay in avenging his father's death can be interpreted as unconscious guilt, because Claudius did what Hamlet secretly desired: kill the father and possess the mother. From a Lacanian perspective, Hamlet is torn between the imaginary, emotional desires, the symbolic, social laws and duty, and the real, the trauma of death. When Hamlet speaks of dreams, madness, and fear of the unknown, these are expressions of repressed anxieties and existential dread. His inner conflict, hesitation, and erratic behavior can be seen as a breakdown of the ego's control under pressure from both the id and superego. Do not forget that there is not only one way to analyze or study a piece of literature using the psychoanalytic lens. Here is another example using Hamlet again, but by applying Lacanian analysis. Hamlet's identity crisis reflects the mirror stage. He doesn't know who he is without his father's image. His speech is full of symbolic contradictions, torn between law, duty, and personal desire. The appearance of the ghost may represent the real, a traumatic disruption that cannot be fully understood or integrated. After providing you with examples, let's talk about the strengths and criticisms of the psychoanalytic perspective. Strengths of psychoanalytic criticism include deep character analysis, exploration of hidden meanings, insights into authorial psychology or cultural anxieties. Criticisms: overemphasis on sex and childhood. Bias toward Western, male-centered psychology can feel speculative or outdated if applied rigidly. To conclude, psychoanalytic criticism opens up literature like a dream waiting to be interpreted. By exploring the unconscious desires, repressed fears, and symbolic meanings within texts, we discover that stories often speak the language of the psyche. Whether you're analyzing Hamlet's hesitation or a modern novel's symbolic dream, this method offers a powerful lens. What hidden meanings have you found in a favorite book? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more literary insights.